How do I live without you? I want to know. How do I breathe without you? I got to know. How do I ever survive? Hello and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies. The podcast where Matt and Todd go see a movie at our local Regal theater. And then we talk about it in the parking lot, in Matt's Honda Pilot. We talk about, should you see this movie? Should you not see this movie? Should you see it in theaters? Should you wait for streaming? We try to cover all that and maybe sometimes just a tad more. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy. And yes, sometimes we cover a tad more. Sometimes we sing Leanne rhymes.
Yes.
Today's one of those days.
Yep.
Completely appropriate for the film that we saw tonight. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yes.
Yes. It's another one of those titles that wants to flee from me when I have to say it.
Well, I'm also going to look it up to make sure we're right real quick.
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
There we go.
Nice. Well, yes, we saw this movie. This movie stars Nick Cage as himself.
Yes.
But he's really playing a version of himself.
Also, yes.
So, anyway, so there's a few people in it other than Nick Cage. You've got your
Mandalorian.
You got your Mandalorian.
Pedro Pascal.
Right? You got your Barney Stinson is in this. Neil Patrick Harris. Tiffany Haddish is in this.
Correct.
In another role where I didn't hate her. But maybe you did.
I'll wait to talk about that.
Okay. Well, who else? Who did I miss?
As far as famous people, I'm going to say that's it. Okay. Although there are some surprise famous people at the end that I will not reveal.
Okay. Fair enough.
But as far as celebrities, I think that's probably you've covered.
Are there any people related to famous people who are in this? The daughter is who I'm thinking of. Is the daughter?
Think so. Her name is Lily Mo Sheen. Oh, is she a Sheen?
That was my
what you're
thought.
alluding to it?
That was my thought. I don't know. If she's of the Sheen Estevez conglomerate family structure.
I'm looking her up in IMDb, and it's not saying anything about.
All right.
Oh, wait, well, here we go. Oh, never mind. Never mind. Nope. Nope.
Well,
I would assume if she was a Sheen, that would be put on display.
Yeah.
In IMDb.
Yeah. Well.
So.
All right. We'll just say she's not famous then.
What if she was Emilio's daughter and she went by Sheen and he stayed in Estevez? Wouldn't that be weird?
That would be wild.
Yeah.
That would be wild. Well, anyway. All right.
Although to her credit, she's been in some stuff.
Yeah.
She was in Click. I assume she was the daughter.
Yeah.
She was in Underworld, one of the Underworld movies. That's it, though.
Fair enough.
I guess some stuff, but some being a small number.
Right. Well, we'll be on the lookout for future appearances of her. So, what's this movie about? This movie is about Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage, and he's like an actor with debt problems and a bad relationship with his family, and then he takes this offer to go to stay with a guy in Spain and get paid $1 million for it. So he decides to do that after missing out on a lucrative acting job. He says, I'm quitting acting. I'm doing this to pay off my debts, and I'm going to ride off into the sunset and be retired. And this guy who hires him is going to pay him $1 million, but he has the ulterior motive of wanting Nicolas Cage to star in a movie that he wrote. So you got that going on. And then it becomes clear that there's some kind of arms dealer thing going on with this guy that he's here visiting in Spain, and the U.S. government is onto it for some reason. They're closely monitoring the situation, and so they for some reason recruit him to kind of help out with their operation of tracking this arms dealer.
Yeah.
And and so over the course of the movie, Nicolas Cage strikes up a friendship with this wannabe arms dealer,
Javi
Javi,
is his name.
and eventually his family is brought on the scene, and he learns lessons about life and family, and then an action film breaks out, and he saves his family, and and in the end we find out that the movie that you're seeing is the movie that Javi and Nicolas Cage wrote together as they were spending time together. So I'm going to say that's kind of the gist of the movie there.
Yes.
Are you still researching
I will say
the Sheen family?
Found out something fascinating.
Okay. Which is?
So the girl we're talking about from this movie, the woman, sorry, I didn't mean to call her a girl.
Yes.
She's the daughter of Kate Beckinsale and Michael Sheen, who's not part of the Sheen dynasty, but he's a famous guy within his own right, a famous actor. So I just found that fascinating.
Yes.
Because at first I was like, well, I know who Kate Beckinsale is, but who's Michael Sheen? I feel like I know that, and he's been in a whole bunch of stuff. Let me show you a picture. You'll be like, oh, that guy.
Oh, it's that guy.
Yeah.
Most famous for?
I don't know what.
Unknown.
Oh, he's in Good Omens, the show. It's hard to say what he probably is the most famous for. He's been in a ton of stuff.
Having a child with Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah.
He was in this movie. So now we know.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So there you have it. That's who's in it. That's what this movie's about. Todd, now's the time in this podcast where you share your thoughts.
I'll let my thoughts fly.
Fly them right out of your mouth.
So, I'm going to start by saying this. I think our last 3 movies that we've seen, to me, have been a breath of fresh air. That's Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, Northman, and this movie. And I say that because all 3 of those movies, to me, have not followed any kind of, that much of a concept that we've seen recently, that we're not, seeing all the time in theaters.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's, each week I've been man, it's been reigniting my love of going to the movies. Not that I was, feeling like I don't want to do this anymore. But I was it's so nice to watch these movies that are just out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And this movie just totally fits that bill as well. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna land on the side of I like this movie. Maybe even take it up a tier 2. I really like this movie. But that's not to say it doesn't have its distractors or its problems. And I don't know. I can't tell if this movie is genius or it just lucked out. So the most fascinating thing about this movie to me is how meta it is, and that causes a lot of humor. I mean, I must have been smiling probably through the whole movie. And definitely I laughed at several parts, very audibly at some parts. And but where I can't tell if this is genius or they just lucked out is at first I was getting kind of annoyed because I was like, as soon as you kind of enter a groove, they change the format of the movie.
Uh-huh.
And when it first happened, I was like, no, go back. Because I was having so much fun with, like, the start of this movie, which is, you know, Nick Cage playing Nick Cage and just how goofy and crazy that's going. And also, one of the things I loved about this movie is Nick Cage has an imaginary friend, kind of, who's just the younger version of him, who he argues with. And it's like, it's chaotic, but it's just so hilarious. And it's like, well, we're talking like a Nick Cage, he calls him Nicky. A Nick Cage that's like super young. We're talking like very beginning of the film career, Nick Cage. And he is like so expressive and like that Nick Cage from that time. It's just like, it just was so hilarious to me in those moments. And, but then it's like, so then, you know, the start of this movie is following Nick Cage and being down on his luck, you know, kind of career winding down Nick Cage, money problems Nick Cage, all the stuff that we've heard about in the news and all the Hollywood dirt sheets and stuff like that, you know, and it was just kind of hilarious to ride that ride. And then it shifts into like he meets Javi and they start to develop a movie and stuff like that. And then it becomes super meta because the movie that they start and describe is the movie you're kind of watching at this point. Like, and at first I was like, you know, when the CIA comes in and stuff like that, I was like, let's not move away from the goofiness because I was really having a fun time with that. But when the movie ended, I kind of thought to myself, maybe they moved off of it at the right moment and I didn't get tired of it. Because as I was thinking about it, I was like, if the whole movie was that, sure, I would laugh a lot, but I'd also get really tired of it, I think. And it's like, by the time I'm thinking that it's possible I was getting to the point where I was like, I'm kind of tired of this, the movie shifts again. And again, I can't tell if that's genius or they got lucky. Like, or, you know, if I'm on my own island was thinking that way or whatever. But everyone, I think, Nick Cage, I thought, was phenomenal in this movie. Like, and it's just such a weird movie. It was a lovable weird movie. Pedro Pascal was also enjoyable in this movie. And I thought everyone did a fine job acting. Like, I didn't think there was any kind of, like, super weak link. But it's also, like, I think Pedro Pascal and Nick Cage had so much room in this movie to just get as wacky and as meta as possible. And to me, those moments equaled the most fun. Like, I was laughing the most and stuff like that. You know, and it's following the tone shifts of the movie, and it kind of draws you in with some drama and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, at times I was like I got a little tired of the CIA plot. But it still was, you know, very enjoyable. Like, it's not like I don't think it's like an Oscar-worthy movie by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I don't know what you could possibly nominate this movie for. Best screenplay, maybe. But, yeah, I had a really great time. It's just like one of those movies where, like, it was fun to come to the movie theater, zone out, and enjoy myself. And I gotta give credit where credit's due for a movie that can make me do that. Like, and I'm not in my own mind picking apart while I'm watching it and stuff like that. If it can kind of move me into just enjoying myself, you know, that's a win for me. So yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous story. It's a ridiculous movie. It's ridiculous plot twists. And I think anyone who's just a fan of movies, certainly anyone who likes to watch Nick Cage's movies and enjoys his method acting or whatever he does, is gonna, I think, have a good time in this movie. Maybe you won't come out the other side being like, I love that movie, but I have a hard time, unless I'm way off base with how you feel. I don't think anyone's gonna walk out of this movie and go like, well, that was a waste of my time. So with those parameters, I would say that I would encourage anyone to watch this movie. And it's also not it's not so bad in an area that you know would have to hide it from like. Not, I mean, obviously don't watch like little kids watch this movie, but you know, PG-13 or above. Like I would say, there's some language, and there are some somewhat fight scenes and gunplay, but it's not so over the top or grotesque that like it disqualifies younger people from watching this movie.
What if you're a Tiffany Haddish fan? Are you gonna like this movie?
I think if one thing that I thought was like kind of like don't introduce these characters if you're not gonna give them their due is that Tiffany Haddish's character and the other CIA agent character, who I can't remember the actor's name, he's been in some stuff too, but I wouldn't say he's a celebrity. It's almost like they get introduced and they're in a couple of scenes and then they're kind of not anymore. And it's like, it was kind of quick. Like, I was like, seems like an important plot. And I think there's a ton more screen time that they had that got cut and was probably on the editing floor. Now, I'm not saying that was a bad decision, but it makes it a little bit harder to rate their performances because you don't see a whole lot of them. Mm-hmm. That being said, their parts, the roles they play are not hard. So I can't really say, hey, Tiffany Haddish knocked this out of the park or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't think she did bad, but I don't feel like I can really like give her a standing ovation for what little she had to do in this movie.
Fair enough.
But I mean, she didn't do bad. I feel like her personality is the same in every single movie. Like, yes. And I know that's like your gripe is that it's Tiffany Haddish playing Tiffany Haddish role.
Yes.
And I think that's more the same here.
Yes.
Absolutely. There wasn't even an attempt for her to be any different than she's been in any other movie before. So, right. You know, whether or not you would call that a bad performance or not, I don't know. I'm just going to say it was adequate. It wasn't an important role by any stretch of the imagination, I think. So, do I think she probably just phoned it in? Sure. Like, but anyway, I'm going to land on the side of, again, I think anyone should see this movie. I enjoyed myself. I had a fun time. And, you know, do you need to see it in theaters? I don't know if there was any theater benefit to this movie, but as a fan of the theater experience, I mean, I would say if you're somewhat like me, then just go see it in theaters. Like, it's enjoyable. Who knows where this is going to land on streaming and how long you have to wait for it. And I think it's just something enjoyable enough that I think people should attempt to see it before it's out of theaters, is what I would say. So, that's me. Matt, start with Tiffany Haddish. How'd you feel?
This podcast is now about Tiffany Haddish. I felt okay. At this point, I'm resigned to the fact that she's not playing a character. She's just...
Yeah, when you hire Tiffany Haddish, you're hiring Tiffany Haddish.
Being herself.
Like, yeah.
And it was fine. She was fine. She was there for comedic moments, and I felt like she actually did a decent job delivering on those moments. I think, so, there's Tiffany Haddish. I think in general, I'll expand that to say that the comedic lines that were delivered in this film, that was a highlight for me.
Absolutely.
Like the timing was right on kind of all the little jokes and everything else. And like you, there was a couple times I just laughed out loud.
Yeah.
Just really funny, over the top moments, and there's one exchange in particular. One thing to know about me, Todd, I don't know if you know this or not.
Oh, okay.
But I have a great fondness for, like, you see these all the time online. They're like text exchanges gone wrong, or like funny text exchanges.
Yeah.
I read through those, and I just start laughing uncontrollably. And there is a particular
the text exchange in the
yes, there's a text exchange in the movie that had me laughing out loud because it was just Like, it was just perfectly timed.
It was very good.
Anyway, so I thought overall the movie was enjoyable. I wasn't really... I thought it was a little bit over the top at the beginning. But you mentioned the kind of shifts between genres that we do in the movie.
Yes.
And by the end, I really was enjoying what they were doing with things. It just sort of like grew in its ridiculousness as time went on.
Yeah.
And that was a positive for this movie.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sold in like the first 20 minutes to half an hour.
Oh, I was.
Yes.
As soon as Nicky Cage showed up, I was like, you got me.
Yeah. It took me a little bit longer, but I did get to the point where I was like, all right, this is good. This is enjoyable, and I'm having a good time now. So
that's why I'm saying I can't decide if it's genius or not, the tone shift of the movie. Like, I do think there's something there that it didn't let you stay in that groove for too long to get so sick of it.
Right. So, I think we have to give the benefit of the doubt and say that's how they wanted the movie to be.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Unless, the director comes out and says, hey,
woo, we really lucked out.
This was just luck. We went with it. No, they sat there, they edited it, they decided what things were going to happen and stay in the movie.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I give it to them. So, there was something else I was going to say that I've now forgotten.
I probably distracted you.
Well, these things happen. Yeah, well, I'm just going to leave it there then.
Maybe it'll pop back up.
Maybe
we can only hope.
We can hope. But I'll say, yeah, I agree. You don't really need to see this in the theaters, but I think you'll have a good time with it.
Yeah, I would argue that, and it's surprising to me that it's taking me so long to have this thought about seeing movies in theaters, and whether or not you should see a movie in theater or not. But I'm gonna land firmly on you should see this movie in theaters, not because the theater experience enhances the movie, but because you want to reward movies like this that take a chance. Like, if all we're going out to see is the latest blockbuster, then that's still all we're gonna get. But if these movies that take chances and have just such interesting kind of plots and stuff like that, if we're like, okay, well, that seems interesting, but I'll wait for streaming, then that's going to limit movies that we see in the future because, they're not going to make their budget back, or they're going to be considered a flop or whatever. And then it's like the next person who wants to take a chance, no one's going to get financing for that movie. So I would say in that aspect, go see this movie in theaters. But if you don't believe in that dream or whatever, don't force it.
Good caveats there.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Well, Matt.
Yes.
How many grotesque Nick Cage statues would you give this movie?
Oh, you reminded me.
Okay, good.
Yes. So, before we get to my rating, I'll say that one thing I didn't like about this movie is that because we go to the movies a lot, we see a lot of these trailers, and we see them a lot of times.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. I know where you're going with this.
We saw this trailer a lot.
Yeah.
Everything in the trailer pretty much is in the movie presented in the same way.
Yeah.
Like, they reveal a ton of the movie if you watch the trailer.
Yeah.
And the movie's going along, and you're like, oh, now this shot is going to come in from the trailer. I'm going to see that happen. And it does. And that happens a few different times. So that's not really a knock on the movie, but it is a knock on the marketing.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would have done instead, but I would say that was like a minus for me overall, is that I had already seen like a lot of the funny scenes,
right,
and I knew they were coming in the movie. So
yeah, that's a tricky one because you have to make a trailer that's going to engage everyone and hook them, but also like you don't want to spoil too, or like you don't want the feeling like you're describing now of like, man, all this was in the trailer, and all that kind of stuff. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So.
But how many grotesque Nick Cage statues would you give this movie. 0 being the worst because then you have none, and obviously more Nick Cage grotesque statues are important. 5 being the best because then you have your own kind of like small army. You can field a basketball team
of Nick Cage statues.
of Nick Cage statues
in grotesque form.
Yes.
Yeah. So there is a grotesque Nick Cage statue in this movie, and it's called grotesque by Nick Cage himself.
Yeah, that's not our opinion. That's just pulling that straight from which is also in the trailer.
Yes, it is. I'm gonna go with 3.2 grotesque Nick Cage statues out of 5. I thought this was an above average movie. They took some chances. I liked what they did. You're right. This isn't going to be an Oscar winner, but you know, I had a good time, and so 3.2.
Nice.
That's what you get from me.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like there's a good chance that this movie over time is going to continue to really grow on me. Like, and so I think if you ask me like in a couple of months where I'm at, my number will be higher than where I'm at now. But I'm you know, it was my first thought. I got to go with my gut reaction. I'm at a 3.9. Like, I had a really good time. I got so sucked into the movie that when it was over, I was like, holy crap, that felt like 5 minutes. Like, yeah, and like all the good things you kind of want to feel from a movie. Like, obviously I'm not like moved on a deep spiritual level with this movie, but you know, as far as like there's movies like this are important in my opinion, as far as like movies that take a chance but also just are good enough that you're like, man, this was just enjoyable. Like, yeah, it's not like The Godfather or anything, but it's, you know, it was a great time. Like, I had a very good time tonight. And that's important. So, that's where I'm at, 3.9.
3.9. Great. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we reviewed the unbearable weight
of massive talent.
Yes. And we gave it an average rating of 3.55 grotesque Nicolas Cage statues. And that is a good rating for us.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, we both feel like you should watch this. And so you watch it. And thank you for listening to the old podcast, especially the person who last week listened to on Monday and Wednesday, listened to every episode of our podcast.
Yeah.
Which was amazing.
Greatly inflated our numbers for the week, to which we were both very surprised.
Yes. Enough that I did the research to find out what happened, and I was like, wait a second, there was one download of every episode. Well, and
honestly, I feel incredibly honored by that, because I know I have fallen down that rabbit hole of podcasts before, where I find one and I'm like, man, I want to listen to all of these. And so for the next couple of days, it's all you're doing.
Right.
Now I can claim that has happened for my podcast, our podcast.
Yes.
And that's an honor.
It is an honor. So,
I also want to throw out a challenge for this specific episode. I want to know what everyone's favorite Nick Cage movie is.
Oh, okay.
So when we post this on either social media platform that we do, whether it be Instagram or Facebook, I want to know what your favorite Nick Cage movie is. And I'm not going to reveal mine right now, because then you got to earn it. I want some people to respond to this, and then I'll reveal mine.
Fair enough. Well, I will make sure that in the description there will be this little question. So, all right, great. Well, if you downloaded it via social media, you saw the question. Answer the question, please. And if you didn't, you just have a subscription. Thank you. And if you're that person, I owe you $5.
Double thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And I owe you $5.
Yeah. Come collect.
If you can make me believe that was you who listened to all those episodes, I'll give you $5.
Oh.
So, thank you for listening, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da-da.
da da da.
Da-da-da.